So let us see few questions and answers in operating systems. First is, what is the main purpose of operating system? And definition of operating system will also be asked, but what are the purposes of main operating system? There are various purposes. Operating system actually make your hardware work for you. So it's a interface between you as an individual or a human being and the machine. So one, it is designed to make sure a computer system performs well by managing its computational activities. Another is that it provides an environment for the development and execution of programs. These programs can be application programs. This can be system programs. What is demand paging? Demand paging is a system wherein area of a memory that are not currently being used are swapped to disk to make room for an application's need. So which is unused, the pages which are unused, they are being sent back because we need room in the main memory for those pages which are actually the application is needing them. So what are the advantages of a multiprocessor system? Multi means many, processor means processors. The advantages is that if you have increased number of processors, there is considerably increase in throughput. Throughput is the main criteria. It also saves you money because they can share resources also. Of course, the reliability will also be increased. What is kernel? Kernel is the core of every operating system. It connects applications to the actual processing of data. It also manages all communications between software and hardware components to ensure usability and reliability. What are real time system? Because time is involved, real means real time. Time is the main criteria, so real time systems are used when rigid time requirements have been placed on the operation of a processor. So it has well-defined and fixed time constraints. So the time is the main constraint. What is virtual memory? Virtual memory is a memory management technique for letting processor execute outside of memory. This is very useful, especially in executing a program that cannot fit in your physical memory. So virtual memory is a memory which is virtual, which is not seen, or the application understand that I have enough memory at my disposal, but it is not. So it's a kind of technique. And describe the objective of multiprogramming. Again, multi means many, programming means programs. So the main objective of multiprogramming is to have process running at all times. All times running of the process, multiprogramming. So with this design, CPU utilization is set to be maximized. What are time sharing systems? Now, time sharing systems, the CPU executes multiple jobs by switching among them, also known as multitasking. So time sharing, multitasking, and this process happens so fast, so rapid that users cannot actually interact with each program, or can actually interact with each program while it is running, and they are not aware that they only think that my program is being considered while the processor or the system is taking care of each of them in a very rapid timing interval. What is SMP? SMP is for symmetric multiprocessing and is the most common type of multiprocessor system, SMP. So in this system, each processor runs on an identical copy of operating systems. We have one processor P1, P2. They runs on identical copy of the OS, and these copies communicate with one another as needed. So it has its own OS running, and they can communicate via any communication terminology. So how are server systems classified? Server system can be classified as either computer server systems or a file server system. So in this case, an interface is made available for clients to send requests to perform an action. So in the second case, provisions are in this file server. The provisions are made for client to create and access and update the files. That is why it is a file server. What is asymmetric clustering? Now in asymmetric clustering, because this is asymmetric, not symmetric, a machine is in a state known as hot standby mode, where it does nothing but to monitor the active server, right? The machine is in that state, hot standby, you can say, where it does nothing but to monitor the active server. So this machine takes the active server's role should the server fails, right? If the server fails, this machine, which is at the hot standby mode, will take over. This is asymmetric clustering. What is a thread? Now, this is a very basic program process, and thread reference is always asked because thread is so much used. It has solved so many issues. That is why threads are the basic interview questions or choice of questions. Because those who are asking you, they have been asked this question only several number of times. So a thread is a lightweight process. It is a basic unit of CPU utilization. In general, a thread is composed of a thread ID. It has its own program counter, register stack, and the stack, but it does not share memory. But means it shares memory. It does not use its own overall area and the constituents like process does. So it's lightweight, less time consuming, and it runs various threads can run together. So it gives some benefits of multi-threaded programming. Again, many threaded means threads. So multi-threads, so there is an increased responsiveness to the user because multiple threads are performing the activity. Resource sharing within the process, because thread does not require any. They can share. Economy and utilization of multiprocessing architecture. Explained in brief, FCFS. FCFS is short for first come, first serve, and it's one type of scheduling algorithm. This is scheduling algorithm because there are various scheduling algorithms how the processor schedules the processes. There are various. In one of them is FCFS, first come, first serve. So in this scheme, the process that requests the CPU first is allocated the CPU first. So implementation is managed in the FIFO, that is first in first out queue, first come first serve. What is RR scheduling algorithm? Just like FCFS is an algorithm of scheduling, RR is also one of them. Round robin scheduling algorithm. This is primarily aimed for time sharing system. Round robin, go round. So a circular queue is set up in such a way that CPU scheduler goes around the queue, allocating CPU to each of the processor for time interval of up to say what has been decided, means 10 milliseconds or up to 100 milliseconds or whatever time has been decided. So every process gets a chance or gets its opportunity to be worked upon by the processor. What necessary condition can lead to a deadlock situation in a system? Deadlock situation occurs when four conditions occur simultaneously in a system. This is mutual exclusion, this is hold and wait, this is no preemption, and circular blade. All these four has specific meaning, specific criteria. So if these four are happening together, you must be knowing or you must be aware that the deadlock situation has occurred. Enumerate the different RAID levels. RAID is redundant array of independent disk, you can say, a redundant array of independent disk. RAID 0 to 6. So in RAID 0, there is no redundant striping. In RAID 1, there is mirror disks are there. In RAID 2, memory style error coding correcting codes are there. RAID 3, you have bit interleave parity. RAID 4, you have block interleave parity. And RAID 5, you have block interleave distributed parity. And RAID 6, you have this P plus Q redundancy, right? So this is the lowest level. You have non-redundant striping, and as you go up in this ladder, you go up to RAID 6. This is basically you are trying to save your data if something happens, something fails, and you are able to recover also the data which you have lost. Or hot swapping can be done in within no time and without being in the awareness of the user. Describes this Banker's algorithm. This is a very important algorithm. The Banker's algorithm is one form of deadlock avoidance in a system. Deadlock avoidance. It gets its name from the banking system, wherein the bank never allocates available cash in such a way that it cannot longer satisfy the needs of all the customer. So bank here is our processor, you can say, and or operating system, and the customers are the resources. So what and the customers maybe the processors also. So the processors are asking for the resources. Now what operating system does, he will allot those number of resources to the processors only till it can attain the completeness of the resources which is sought by some other processor. So it has that abundance, it will keep that abundance to just satisfy other processors as well. So it will just release those number of resources that are required for those processes, because he has to keep in view other resources also. And that is how the banker's algorithm avoid the deadlock. What factors determine whether a detection algorithm must be utilized in a deadlock avoidance system? One is that it depends on how often a deadlock is likely to occur under some implementation of the algorithm, and the other has to do with how many processes will be affected by a deadlock when the algorithm is applied. These are the two aspects which needs to be seen. Differentiate logical from physical address space. This is a very important question, because until you understand this, there is no point in understanding virtual memory and all those scientific stuff, because this is very basic question. Logical addresses refers to the address that is generated by CPU. This is not actual address. Logical address generated by CPU. On the other hand, the physical address, this refers to the address that is seen by the main memory unit. Main memory sees physical address, while the CPU sees the logical address. This is the difference between these spaces. Now, how does dynamic loading aid in better memory space utilization? So with dynamic loading, a routine is not loaded until it is called. So this method is especially useful. A large amount of code are needed in order to handle infrequently occurring cases such as error routines. That is how it helps. What are overlays? The overlays are used to enable a process to be larger than the amount of memory allocated to it. Right? The basic idea is that only instructions and data that are needed at any given time are kept in memory. Right? Overlays, these are useful to show a process to be larger than the amount of memory. Memory is this memory is this size, and your process is of this size. This can only be done if the instruction and data that are needed at a given point of time are only kept in the memory. What is the basic function of paging? Now, paging is a memory management scheme that permits this physical address space of a process to be non-contiguous. Physical address space to be non-contiguous. It avoids the considerable problem of having to fit varied size memory chunks onto the backing store. What is fragmentation? Fragmentation is a wastage of memory. It can be internal if you are dealing with systems that have fixed size allocation units, or external, like just for example, say array. Say you have initialized an array of 100 numbers, say. Now you have just used 10 of them. 90 is wasted. This is internal fragmentation. Or external, if you are dealing with systems that have variable size allocation units. This is external. How does swapping result in better memory management? Now, during regular intervals that are set by the operating system, processes can be copied from main memory to a backing store and then copied back later. So swapping allows more processes to be run that can fit into memory at any time. So you have a main memory here, and this is a backing store, huge store. Now, when these pages are not required, the operating system can send them back. When they are required, they can be called back. So this is how the swapping is done. This is swapping. So it's a better memory management. Now, give an example of a process state. Process can be in new state. It's just being created. Running means instructions are being executed. Waiting means the process is waiting for certain conditions or events to be met or occur. And then ready means the process is waiting for an instruction from the main processor. And terminate means process is done executing. What is a socket? A socket provides a connection between two applications. Application 1, application 2, yes, what is called a socket. So each endpoint of a communication is a socket. What is a direct access method? Direct access method is based on disk model of a file. So such that it is viewed as a number of sequence of blocks or records. It allows arbitrary blocks to be read or written. So this direct access is advantageous when you are accessing a large amount of information. When does this thrashing occurs? Thrashing refers to the instance of high paging activity. Rather than doing useful work, the system is busy in paging. So this happens when it is spending more than paging instead of executing. What is the best page size when designing an operating system? This is a very subjective question. The best paging size varies from system to system. So there is no single best when it comes to page size. There are different factors to consider in order to come up with suitable page size, such as page table, paging time, and its effect on the overall efficiency of the operating system. When designing a file structure of an operating system, what attributes are considered? This is a very famous question. That you are designing a file structure of an operating system, or attributes are considered. And this is just not for designing a file structure. Anything which is in operating system, this type of questions can come. So typically, the different attributes of a file structure are the naming, identifiers, important file types, location of the size of files, and the size and the level of protection is required. These all things needs to be considered. What is root partition? Root partition is where the operating system kernel is located. So it also contains other potentially important system files that are mounted during boot time. And what are device drivers? Device drivers provide a standard means of representing I/O devices, input-output devices, that may be manufactured by different companies. So this prevents conflict whenever such devices are incorporated in a system unit. So these device drivers, which are being connected like I/O devices, drivers, they drive them. So they provide a software version to make them active or known to the system. What are the primary functions of VFS? VFS is virtual file system. This separates file system generic operations from their implementation by defining a clean VFS service, virtual file system. So it is also based on a file representation structure known as VNode, which contains a numerical designator needed to support network file systems. What are the different types of CPU registers in a typical operating system design? You have accumulators, index registers, stack pointers, and general purpose registers. What is the purpose of I/O status information? I/O status information provides information about which I/O devices or input-output devices are to be allocated for a particular process. It also shows which files are opened and other I/O device status or state. What is multitasking? This already we have seen. Anyways, we'll discuss it again. Multitasking is the process with an operating system that allows the user to run several applications at the same time. So multiple tasks at the same time. However, only one application is active at the time for the user interaction. Now things have changed because we have multiprocessors or different processors in your single system. Although some applications can run behind the scenes as well. What are some pros and cons of a command line interface? A command line interface allows the user to type in commands that can immediately provide results. Many seasoned computers are well accustomed to using a command line because they find it quicker and simpler. The main problem with the command line interface is that users have to be familiar with the commands. They have to learn, and they have to just a one word or one character misplaced will not be able to work it out. You have to see some help and all. So including the switches and parameters that come in, because you have these slashes and hyphens. There are so many things you need to learn. So this is the downside for people who are not fond of memorizing commands. Now, what is caching? Caching is the processing of utilizing a region of fast memory for a limited data in a process. So cache memory is usually much efficient because of its high speed, access speed. Previously it was only one cache. Now you have level 1, level 2, level 3. There's so many level caches are there. What is spooling? Spooling is actually is associated with printing. When different applications want to send an output to the printer at the same time, spooling takes place on these print job into a disk file and queues them according to the printer. So printer maintains a queue which maintains the input which has fired from various devices. Now, what is an assembler? Assembler, you assume you have a high-level language. You are converting it to an assembly language. This is an assembler. So, as an assembler acts as a translator for a low-level language. Assembly codes written using mnemonic commands are translated by the assembler into machine language. Okay, let me clear it. You have assembly language like 8085 you might have learned. You are converting this into machine language. Okay, just take it the way I say. Assembly language to the machine language, it is assembler. Now, high level, like English-like language, like C, C++, Java, you convert them into machine language and you say you have a compiler. So, this is the difference between a compiler and an assembler. What are interrupts? The interrupts are a part of a hardware mechanism that sends a notification to the CPU when it wants to gain access to a particular resource. So, an interrupt handler receives this interrupt signal and tells the processor to take action which is based on interrupt request. So you have various type of interrupts. Some are maskable, some are non-maskable. What is GUI? GUI is a graphical user interface acronym. So it provides user with an interface wherein actions can be performed by interacting with icons and graphical symbols. So people find it easier to interact with the computer when in a GUI, especially when using the mouse. Instead of having the number of commands to remember and type, user just clicks on buttons to perform a process. So now this is the difference between your GUI and your command line. What is preemptive multitasking? This multitasking. We have seen multitasking. What is preemptive? Preemptive multitasking allows an operating system to switch between the software programs. Preemptive means disturbing or breaking in between. So this in turn allows multiple programs to run without necessarily taking complete control over the processor and resulting in system crashes. So they can be preempted, they can be stopped, they can be you can say rescheduled. Why is partitioning and formatting a prerequisite to installing an operating system? Partitioning and formatting creates a preparatory environment on the drive so that the operating system can be copied and installed properly. So this includes allocating space in the drive, designing a drive name, determining and creating the appropriate file system structure. What is plumbing or piping? So it is the process of using the output of one program as an input to the another program, right? For example, instead of sending the listing of a folder or a drive to the main screen, it can be piped and sent to a file or sent to the printer to produce a hard copy. What is NOS? NOS is Network Operating System. NOS is an acronym for Network Operating System. It is a specialized software that will allow a computer to communicate with other devices over the network, right? Including the file and folder sharing. Differentiate between internal commands and external commands. Internal commands are built-in commands that are already part of the operating system. External commands are separate file programs that are stored in separate folder or directory. Under DOS disk operating system, what command will you type when you want to list down the file in a directory? And at the same time, pause after every screen output. This is very often used command. You have to use directory, this WP, directory W and WP means combine them, and you can do this function. How would a file name example says in any file name example file.txt appear when viewed under the DOS command console operating in Windows 98? It's a very question of decades ago. A file name would appear like this. The reason behind this is that file names under this operating system was only limited to 8 characters when working in the DOS environment. So these were a few questions about operating system. We'll be talking about more operating system questions. Thank you so much. Take care of yourself.